Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The living room was quiet, the game on the screen a welcome distraction. I leaned back in my chair, the cold bottle of beer in my hand as Max, our German shepherd, lay at my feet, his quiet breathing filling the room with a sense of calm. Tracy had gone out with Lisa, and the kids were away for the weekend. It was just me, the game, and the dog. It felt perfect. Life felt perfect. At least, I thought it did. It wasn't until I heard the front door open that the quiet of my evening would be shattered. It wasn't loud, just the usual sound of the door creaking open. But when Tracy stepped into the room, I knew something was wrong. She wasn't smiling like she usually did when she came home. She wasn't laughing or even talking about her night. She was quiet. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Hey," I said, turning the volume down. "How was the night?" She didn't answer at first. Her eyes were fixed on the floor, her fingers nervously playing with the strap of her purse. I could feel the tension in the air, a coldness between us that I couldn't place. "Bob," she said softly, her voice unsteady. "We need to talk." I nodded, setting the beer down. This wasn't good. It never was when she spoke like that. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart began to pound. She hesitated, then finally looked up at me. The word she said next hit me like a physical blow. "I want to sleep with someone else." The words hung in the air, hanging between us, heavy and suffocating. I could feel my chest tightening, the world around me starting to blur. I stared at Tracy, trying to comprehend what she was saying. "You what?" I said, the words barely coming out. "I need something more, Bob," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not about you. It's something I need to experience." She seemed to search for the right words, but I couldn't process them. My mind was spinning. "I love you," she added, her voice a whisper, "but I need to feel alive again." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly as I did, but I didn't feel the anger rising in me. No, it wasn't that. It was the confusion, the disbelief, the sudden, overwhelming pain that surged through me. "Who?" I managed to ask. "Dan Wilson," she said quietly, her eyes dropping to the floor, not meeting mine. I felt a chill run through me. Dan Wilson, a colleague of hers, a guy I had met a few times, the guy I thought was just a work acquaintance, the man she wanted to sleep with, the man who had wormed his way into our lives without me even noticing. My mind raced. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just some mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was her asking me for permission to betray everything we had built together. I paced the room, my fists clenched at my sides, my thoughts a whirlwind of disbelief and betrayal. "How long has this been going on?" I asked through gritted teeth. "It hasn't happened yet, Bob," she said quickly. "But I need this. I need to feel desired, like I'm something more than just your wife. Please understand." I felt like the room was spinning. How could she ask me for this? How could she betray me, our family, like this? I walked past her, my steps heavy. No, this is crazy. I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't stay in the same room with her. I had to leave. I left. I took a walk, trying to clear my head. My thoughts were all over the place, but one thing kept coming back to me: revenge. I had been loyal. I had trusted her. And now, she was asking me to allow her to be with another man. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. When I got back, I didn't confront her right away. No, I didn't need to. I had already made my decision. I would make her pay. Not immediately, but she would pay. I spent the next few days gathering information. I knew Tracy's password, and I had access to her phone and emails. It didn't take long to dig through her conversations with Dan. The late-night calls, the flirtatious texts. I had the proof I needed, but I didn't confront her yet. I needed more. I spent hours on the phone, doing everything I could to dig deeper into Dan's life. What did I find? More than I expected. He had been sleeping with multiple women while playing the part of a faithful fiancé. I knew I had to expose him, but I needed to make sure it hurt. Emotionally, professionally, personally. It wasn't enough to just expose Tracy's affair. No, I had to go further. I had to make sure Dan's life fell apart too. So I did what needed to be done. I reached out to Olivia, Dan's fiancée. I sent her everything. Every message, every photo, everything that could show her exactly who Dan was. I wasn't doing this out of malice. No, I was doing it because she deserved to know the truth, and I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Within hours, Olivia called off the engagement. Dan was left scrambling, confused, and blindsided. But this was only the beginning. I wasn't done with him. I contacted his boss next. I dug through his work history, found discrepancies, and sent them an anonymous email detailing everything. Dan didn't even see it coming. Within days, he was pulled into a meeting with HR, suspended. Investigations launched. His professional career, the one he had built for years, was about to be obliterated. And Tracy had no idea that I was the one pulling the strings. The next stage was simple: humiliation. I planned a neighborhood gathering, nothing too fancy, just a few drinks, some small talk. But the real purpose was to expose Tracy and Dan. At the height of the evening, I stood up, raising my glass to make a toast. To trust, I said, and to the consequences when that trust is broken. I had everyone's attention. Then I hit play on the projector. The evidence, the emails, the texts, the photos, everything I had gathered was there for everyone to see. The shock was immediate. Tracy's face drained of color. Dan was speechless. It was the moment I had been waiting for. "Think you can just betray me?" I said coldly. "You thought there would be no consequences. But there are." The days that followed were a blur. Tracy and Dan's worlds fell apart. Dan was out of a job. His reputation was destroyed. Olivia left him. Tracy's career and reputation were hanging by a thread. But me? I was just getting started. I hadn't even confronted her directly yet. After that night, Tracy's world turned upside down. It wasn't just her relationship with me that was fractured. It was everything. The social circle she had carefully built, the friendships she had invested so much time in, it all crumbled in the wake of her betrayal. For the first few days, I stayed in the background, watching as she tried desperately to salvage what little was left of her dignity. But I wasn't interested in the drama she was creating around herself. This was her mess, and I wasn't going to clean it up for her. I had made sure the world knew exactly what kind of person she was. Tracy tried to reach out to me several times. I ignored her. There was no need for words anymore. The truth was out there, and nothing she said could undo the damage she had done. It wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't even about her anymore. It was about me, about making sure she understood that betrayal had consequences. Meanwhile, at work, things had started to go downhill for her. Her colleagues, who had once praised her work, began to turn away. Her boss, who had been her ally, was no longer willing to look past her behavior. Tracy's professional reputation was deteriorating, and I knew it was only a matter of time before her career would be as destroyed as her marriage. She was alone. A few weeks passed, and I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my new business venture, something that I had put off for years but was now determined to make happen. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that I was moving forward without her. I spent a lot of time with my kids, ensuring they knew they had my full support. They had been affected by what happened, but I made sure they felt loved and secure. The guilt from the divorce and everything that had followed wasn't something I wanted them to carry. I wanted them to see that, while their mother had made a choice that shattered our family, I was still their rock. It was through this period of rebuilding that I met someone new. Her name was Kathy, a woman I met through some mutual friends. She was kind, understanding, and she saw me for who I was now. Not the man who had been betrayed, but someone who had moved beyond the past. We started talking more, then hanging out. At first, it was casual, but over time, it became clear to both of us that we had something special. Kathy was warm, no nonsense, and she never tried to rush things. For the first time since the divorce, I felt something close to happiness again. It wasn't the same kind of love I had felt for Tracy, but it was real. It was calm. It was also a reminder of how far I had come, how far I had grown. But Tracy wasn't done. She had been trying to fix things behind the scenes, trying to regain some semblance of control. And now, she was coming back trying to salvage whatever little she could. One evening, I got a call from Tracy. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and at first I thought about ignoring it. But something about the way she said my name made me pause. She wasn't pleading, but she was close. "Bob, can we talk?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. I could ignore her. I could continue on with my life. the life I had started to build without her. But I knew she wouldn't stop until she had her say. So I agreed to meet her. We met at a quiet cafe, a place we had once gone to when things were good. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. Tracy was sitting at a corner table when I walked in, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. There were no tears in her eyes this time, no desperate apologies. She had already done the damage. "Bob," she began, her voice trembling, "I know you've moved on. I know you've probably found someone else, and I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I need you to understand something." I sat across from her, my arms crossed. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I used to be. But there was no forgiveness in me, either. "Not yet. I don't want your forgiveness, Bob," she continued. "But I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I ruined our marriage, and I ruined your life. And I see that now. I was selfish. I didn't think about how it would affect anyone else. Just me." I looked at her quietly, absorbing her words. It didn't make a difference. No apology would bring back what she had taken from me. And while I could acknowledge the pain she was feeling, I couldn't forgive it. "Not yet. I can't fix this, Bob," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll never forgive myself for what I did." Her tears finally started to fall, but I couldn't bring myself to feel anything for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. "I think you should go," I said calmly, standing up to leave. "There's nothing left for us to talk about." Tracy continued to try to reach out to me over the next few months, sending messages, leaving voicemails, even contacting mutual friends. But I ignored her. I didn't need her to explain herself. I had already moved on, but I didn't let go of the one thing I knew would be her final reckoning, Dan. I sent Olivia another message. This time it was a simple note, just a few words. "Dan is not who he says he is. The truth is out there. I just wanted to make sure you knew." I knew Olivia had moved on, but I needed to make sure Dan never had the chance to slither back into someone else's life. The years that followed were marked by gradual peace. My relationship with Kathy grew stronger, and I started to believe in second chances. It wasn't easy, but with each passing day, the past faded a little more. Tracy had tried to make amends, but the damage was done. I had given her everything, and she had broken it. Now I had everything I needed, my children, my business, and someone who saw me for who I was now, not who I had been. It's been over a year since that night. The night Tracy and Dan's betrayal changed everything. And while I had moved on, there was still one loose end I couldn't ignore. Even after all this time, even with everything I had built, I still couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unfinished. Some part of me that needed to be at peace. I needed to see it all crumble from start to finish and ensure that it was over. I hadn't seen Tracy in months. Not in person anyway, but I had been hearing things. Whispers. Rumors. She was still trying to salvage whatever was left of her life, but the damage was irreversible. Her career was on life support, and the last of her friends had started to drift away. I knew all this from mutual acquaintances, people who once considered her a confidant, but now viewed her with judgment. It wasn't just her career or her friendships that were falling apart. She had lost the trust of everyone who mattered. She was left with nothing but the guilt of what she had done. And I could feel it. Every time I heard about her, I felt that small flicker of satisfaction, the cold satisfaction that I had taken control of the situation. One rainy afternoon, about a month after my last conversation with Tracy, I got a call from her. My heart didn't race anymore. I didn't feel the familiar sting of anger or betrayal. I felt indifferent, but I knew this call would be different. It had to be. I answered, my voice steady. "Hello, Bob." Her voice came through, hesitant, raw, almost unrecognizable. "I need to see you. I can't do this anymore." I felt a surge of emotion, but it wasn't anger. It was almost like a strange sort of closure. She was coming to me, not because she wanted forgiveness, but because she had nowhere else to go. I hesitated for a moment. It had been so long. Why now? What had finally pushed her to reach out? "Where?" I asked simply. She gave me an address. It was a small cafe, one I had walked past countless times but had never actually stepped into. I agreed to meet her, not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I needed to hear her admit to everything, once and for all. I arrived at the cafe early, just to make sure I could settle my thoughts before I saw her again. The moment I walked in, I saw her sitting at a corner table. Tracy looked older, worn. It wasn't just her appearance. It was in the way she carried herself. The once confident woman who had walked beside me for years, whose smile used to light up the room, was now a shell of herself. She was staring at her coffee when I walked in, and she didn't even look up. I took a deep breath and walked over to her. She looked up then, her face pale, eyes tired, and her lips trembling. She didn't speak right away. "I don't even know why I'm here," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I'm not expecting anything from you. I don't deserve anything from you." I sat down across from her, steady and composed. "Then why are you here?" Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she looked vulnerable. "I want to explain. I want you to understand. I don't know how to fix everything I've broken, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." I stared at her for a long moment. I had heard her apologies before. They meant nothing to me. She had betrayed me, and no amount of words could change that. But something in her eyes, something in her voice, told me that she had finally realized the weight of her actions. "Do you understand what you did?" I asked quietly. "Do you really understand what you took from me? From us?" She nodded slowly, tears starting to form. "Yes, I destroyed everything. And I'm sorry. I can't undo what I've done. I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I needed you to know that I get it now. I know what I lost." I could feel my chest tighten. I had spent so many nights wondering if she would ever understand. I had made her feel the consequences of her actions, but to see her in this state was different. This wasn't just a woman who was sorry for getting caught. This was a woman who had seen everything she loved burn to the ground. But it didn't matter. "I don't need your apology, Tracy," I said, my voice calm. "I've moved on. I've rebuilt everything you destroyed, and it doesn't involve you. It never will again." Her eyes met mine, filled with the remnants of regret and sorrow. "I know. I understand. I needed you to hear me say it. I've lost everything, Bob. My career, my friends, my family." I watched her carefully, her words sinking in. I thought about the years we had spent together, the love, the trust, the way things had slowly unraveled. And now, here we were sitting across from each other, but it wasn't the same. "I can't fix this," she said. "I'll never fix it. But I hope you find peace." I stood up, placing a hand on the table, my eyes still on hers. "I have, and I don't need you in my life anymore, Tracy." With that, I walked out, and I never looked back. As the months passed, everything continued to fall into place. Tracy remained a distant memory, her presence only existing in the stories I told others about the past that I had fully let go of. Kathy and I continued to grow closer. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't need to. She saw me as I was, someone who had been hurt, but who had learned to move forward. With her, I started to feel what it was like to be truly happy again. I expanded my business, built stronger relationships with my children, and began to think about my future without Tracy in it. And I realized that I didn't need her to complete me. I didn't need anyone to. I had already healed on my own. Tracy, on the other hand, continued her downward spiral. No amount of apologies could undo the damage she had done. She tried reaching out to me, but I never responded. I had nothing left to give her. I had reclaimed my life. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was the man who had overcome it. And nothing was going to take that away from me.